their studios, which was a fabulous tour. And if you go to California, I can highly recommend it. It sounds maybe a little touristy, but it's not. It's really great. Well, although we did the Turner Classic Movies version of it, there are several different ones. There are for tours where people are more interested in seeing the set of Friends and things like that. It's still a working studio. In fact, it's like sold out. Every one of the sound stages has something going on at it. But we watched last night a documentary from 2019, which you can get on Amazon Prime and probably several other places, called Maestro of Movie Music. And it was about Max Steiner, who basically is the inventor of the movie soundtrack. He started in silent movies and started at a time when they just played music, a lot of times classical music, even in some of the great movie palaces. Basically it had nothing to do with the film. It was just good music. And then he basically invented the idea that the score would embellish the movie, that there would be different themes for different characters, that there'd be an overarching type of thing, as is done basically in the opera. And it's just a fascinating tale about the evolution of the movie business and this unbelievably, breakthrough person who eventually would do the soundtracks for Gone with the Wind and Casablanca and hundreds of other movies. It's just fascinating. And I watched a documentary once where they took movies and, dramatic movies, and they took some scenes and they took the music out of them. And you get to see what it would be like if, some movies are shot without really a soundtrack and it's fine and it works. And other ones you would be like, oh, my God, this scene isn't even really good. And it's one of the classic scenes of all time. It's very fascinating. And it just tells us a tale of music of another time and how important it is to our experience when we go to the movies.
Yeah, it's elemental to most movies, I think, especially going way back. No, you're right. It when it's done right, it can manipulate your emotions, absolutely, and accentuate them or deepen them or let you know what's coming up or might be coming up. There are all kinds of ways that music can manipulate a narrative, a film narrative, and the great ones do it the best. It's they've figured out a way to absorb all the subtleties and nuances of the film and put music to it, which is that's like a double assignment. Like,
right,
I want to write a really great piece of music, but it's got to be suitable. It's got to fit the it's got to fit the film and the era and the characters. So nothing but admiration for anyone who does that. It's tough gig, and you're right. If there are some movies that you if you think about it, how different they would be if there was no music or the music was something completely different and just not as appropriate.
Well, you could think of the Max Steiner of our generation basically would be John Williams, and just think of the Star Wars films and all these other films that without the music or with different music for that matter. Mm-hmm. And also he had a great pop sensibility. He still, I believe, holds the record. He certainly did at one time. He wrote the theme from the movie A Summer Place in 1959. It was the number one song in the United States for 9 weeks. Google it, and you'll even if you're probably 22 years old, you'd be able to recognize the song. And it feels like summer, and even though it's not a upbeat, peppery song, but that's kind of interesting too, because it was a time through the 50s and into the 60s and maybe a little bit into the 70s where instrumentals were actually something that you saw in the pop charts a lot.
Well, yeah, look at who's the guy who from the Sting, the music from the Sting,
right?
Is Scott Joplin.
Scott Joplin, right?
Yeah. Who's the pianist who did it? God, his name escapes me, but that stuff was all over the radio. A lot of the ragtime music from that film was in the charts, and it just felt natural. I have that soundtrack from when my parents bought it. I still have their copy, but it's great music, and it makes you think of the movie, but it also it's great on its own.
Up next, we've got some big-time artists to talk about. REM, Sarah McLachlan, the Black Keys as well, and some older musicians who I'll use as a couple of examples of people who just want to keep on doing it. I'm right now the victim in my time of my favorite musician deciding he doesn't want to tour anymore, and Mark Knopfler, and many people who do or in many cases don't need the money. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next. It's Danny and Tim's Music Scene, part of Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here at the 23rd Street Brewery with Matt Llewellyn. And Matt, basketball's over, football's still a few months away, but there's always fun to be had at the 23rd Street Brewery.
Absolutely. We've always got something going on here. The games are always going on. It's a great place to come enjoy everything out on the patio. Beautiful scenery out there. Great beer. I've got a great brewer, great food. It's always fun here at the brewery.
And the atmosphere is great and friendly and warm, too.
We always want to make sure you're a lot happier when you leave than you were when you came in.
Always fun here at the 23rd Street Brewery at 23rd and Castle. Make sure to come by when you're in Lawrence. Always great to catch up with Dr. Brad Whittle of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. Everybody wants to make every year a great one mentally and physically, and certainly ASFCA can help in that regard.
Chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapies. We're going to address the body and the mind to keep you in great shape. With winter moving into spring, we don't want to have the opportunity to get hurt or to be slow and not do what we used to do, right?
Absolutely right, and you can do that in a variety of ways.
We can. We love looking at the body and how it moves, looking at the posture and how it holds us to be strong, to be safe, and really to help us do those things we love to do.
The wide variety and range of services you can get helps in that regard at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. 7 locations all around the Kansas City area. Find the one that's most convenient for you. And for more information, visit asfca.com/Danny. That's asfca.com/Danny.
If you'd like to join these and other fine sponsors and market your business on Kansas City's #1 rated podcast, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to working with you.
Welcome back, and basically secondhand, because my wife was watching it on her computer last week when we were in a hotel in Carmel by the Sea, California, by the way, which is a beautiful place. It's quite expensive to do anything, but I got to play free golf at Spyglass Hills, so that was good. Anyway, she was listening to the CBS Morning News version of their interview with REM, and I know you consumed that as well, Tim, and I'll get into and give you a tip. Like most things on those CBS programs, you can get more if you want it. But they were the occasion for them sitting down. Obviously, they ended REM in 2011, but as noted in this piece, they hadn't sat down for an interview together in 31 years. They weren't much for that, even during the height of their fame. And they were being inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, which they were, and they actually performed at the gala, which is cool. And they did "Losing My Religion," but they were stern in the fact that there's no chance they're getting together on any kind of regular basis. It was a revealing and interesting piece. It's the guy who always does the music pieces for CBS Sunday Morning, Anthony Mason, I believe his name is, and I think any excuse I'll give you to talk about REM is always good by me, Tim.
Yeah, so what was interesting, 2 things. The fact that they were in a Songwriters Hall of Fame and they are a band that writes the songs. Everyone writes their own pieces. The 3 guys, Bill Berry, Mike Mills, and Peter Buck, write the instrumental parts, the music, and then Michael Stipe comes in with words and sets the vocal melody. So it's absolutely a collaboration. So it's not like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers or, your standard, like you think of songwriting, it's Paul Simon, or it's, one guy leading the band, writing most of the music. It's the Beatles with 3 songwriters, but this was it was really interesting. And I thought it's worthy. They deserve it, because they're not traditional songwriting group. But their music was so different. And the fact that, people started talking about I had so many people on my feed saying the first time I heard them, I'd never heard it before. They became my band, and they changed the way I listened to music, and they came out of nowhere. And my take is there's so much familiar about their music, but it was also completely unique and like nothing I'd heard. But there were elements of it that I related to. So it helped me figure out how to listen to music like that. And other people said that, like, that's how I got into Radiohead, because it's like, this isn't just a standard, verse, chorus, verse, 3 chords, a minor chord, whatever, a bridge. It's kind of, some of it can be all over the place, but it's so inviting, and you just get immersed in it. So I'm glad that they got this award. It wasn't anyone I would have thought would have even been eligible for it, but it just makes complete sense how they carried themselves and throughout their career. The biggest part for me was when Bill Berry, the drummer who left, got really teary-eyed and just said he regretted it later, and I think he caught the others by surprise. It wasn't something he related to them right away, but it was like in the years since, he's like, I don't know, maybe I should have stuck around more.
Right. The piece is 9 minutes long that they used on the CBS Morning News, of which probably 5.5 minutes is interview. There's a full interview, which you can easily find by just putting in REM CBS full interview. It's 41 minutes long, and I found it interesting not only to listen to it, because they're self-effacing and interesting and fun guys and revealing, and also it was interesting to see what out of 41 minutes they would choose out of, like 25% of the interview, which was also interesting to me as a journalist of sorts. And, of course, the thing with when he got emotional was certainly one of the parts that they would pick. But sometimes there'd be an answer in the little piece, and it would be elaborated more in. So I can highly recommend watching that. And they are very interesting. And, sometimes they use this piece in the piece as well. They were talking about the guitarist was the driving, person who drove them to work more, and Mike Mills said, we were certainly open to his, pushing us along, or he said we were fully willing or something like that. And he goes, well, I'm not sure fully willing is the phrase to use. So right. There was a lot of interesting stuff there for sure.
Uh-huh. Well, like when the interviewer said, so what are the chances? What would it take to get you guys back together again? And Bill Berry said, Mike Mills said, yeah. A comet, like
right,
like Halley's comet or something's going to have to hit the Earth before we get back together. So in other words, yeah, we're not doing it. And Peter Buck said it wouldn't be as good, and he's probably right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool to leave out on your own terms, but you don't necessarily have to if you don't want to. And I thought of that when I was looking at my weekly sleeve notes edition in the Guardian newspaper from England that I often tout here, and has great stuff as well, including a great story this week about Spotify, which you can get as well. But also I saw a piece about a review of John Cale's new album, and it got 4.5 stars out of 5. He's 82 years old. Obviously doesn't have to necessarily do it. It's a more pop-oriented piece of music for him, and maybe a little more joyful. And then I saw that Jimmy Webb will be performing at Knuckleheads in October. The tickets went on sale this past week, or they had a pre-sale for it. And he's 77 years old. He wrote all these famous songs, from MacArthur Park to Wichita Lineman, and many, many songs. So he doesn't need the money, because he was the writer of those. And it just shows that the power and the joy that music brings to not only those of us who are consuming it, but those who are producing it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can still do it and you're comfortable with your performance, and if you don't feel like you're embarrassing yourself or you're making your fans uncomfortable, then go do it. I know people saw Jimmy Webb at Knuckleheads. It's been a couple years at least, but
I think it was a Valentine's Day of 2020, I believe.
Was it?
Maybe that's right.
I heard some mixed things about it, but the people who love him, and I have friends who just think he's one of the greatest songwriters ever, and he probably is. We're just happy to be there and see him and get to talk to him later. it was kind of informal like that. So, but yeah, when a guy like that sits down and starts playing all the songs he's written, that's when you realize, when you hear them all together, and maybe there's one or two you didn't realize that he'd written. It's quite an event. It puts their stature in place, and it just legitimizes their legend.